A basketball jump shot is a shot in which a player propels upward into the air and shoots the ball at the time of reaching the highest point of the jump. The main goal of a jump shot is for the ball to land in the hoop. It is an important skill that allows basketball players to shoot over their opponents in order to score points. The jump shot is the main weapon on offense and requires a high level of technique. The jump shot also accounts for 70% of all shots during a game. There are 6 jump shot phases: the stance, pre-takeoff, ball positioning, upward ball movement, jump phase, and release phase. In the stance phase, the feet are staggered, which causes the center of mass to be equal throughout the movement and minimize forward and backward movement. The feet are also facing the hoop and shoulder width apart, creating balance. The trunk and shoulders might show a slight tilt as they stay in alignment with the feet and directly aim the shooting forearm at the basket. The alignment of the shot can affect the trajectory of the ball. The knees are flexed, which allows multiple muscles ranging from small to large to cause force summation throughout the muscles. This summation increases vertical velocity. Knee flexion should be increased as distance increases as well. Also, a jump shot is quicker when knees are flexed during stance. It decreases the time it takes to get the shot off. In the pre-takeoff phase, the player's body produces force to perform the vertical jump. The forces are produced through the knees and hips. During this phase, the player is prepared for a vertical jump. The amount of force varies per player. In the ball positioning phase, force is greatest at 90 degrees. The angle at the elbow allows the ball to be propelled at the correct arc. The ball will have to overcome torque instead of air resistance if the ball is not within the body's base of support. In the upward ball movement phase, as the player moves the ball upward, forces are produced. The force produced causes a vertical velocity for the ball to propel upward and forward. The upward movement of the ball guarantees the ball is in the position needed to reach the optimal angle at release. During the jump phase, the vertical velocity is produced through the jump. Jumping decreases the distance the ball travels to the hoop and increases the projectile angle. Jumping gives a positive effect over the defender. Force is needed to propel the player upward. Although impulse is needed to propel the player upward, it can decrease accuracy, as can shooting distance. During the release phase, it is beneficial the ball is released at the peak of the jump to obtain the optimal trajectory needed for ball placement in the basket. Height of the player, shoulder, flexion, and velocity of the jump impact this factor. Horizontal velocity is produced on the ball as the wrist flexes in order to produce the needed arc. Release angle also affects accuracy and should be the primary focus for coaches. This is Jaylyn Duran. She is a senior in high school and is a shooting guard. I will be analyzing her shot and explain some corrections that she could possibly make to improve her performance. In this video, you can see that Jaylyn's feet are flat, her knees are flexed over the toes and they are abducted in. Her hips are slightly flexed, and her body ultimately is pretty balanced. Jaylyn could stagger her feet so that her right foot is slightly more forward. This would decrease the momentum during her jump to prevent her from moving forward instead of upward. She could also increase her knee and hip flexion, which would produce more arc on the ball to go into the hoop. Jaylyn's feet are in plantar flexion. Her body is symmetrical with the center of mass just above the hips at her belly button, and her body is balanced overall. No corrections needed during this phase. The angles from the center of the ball to the shoulder and the shoulder to the elbow creates a 90-degree angle, which is optimal to produce force. Ball is close to the body and is at eye level. Shoulder and elbow angle look optimal, and so there are no corrections needed for this phase. The angles of the elbow and shoulder to the center of the ball increases. You can see Jaylyn's elbow extend a little bit, causing her forearm to go forward. The angle of the elbow and wrist to the elbow and the shoulder to the center of the ball is at 90 degrees, but it continues to increase. And the ball is still just above eye level, which is good. A correction for this phase would be to keep her forearm closer to her body and not extend it forward until she hits the peak of her jump, so she can get more of an arc on the ball. Jaylyn's hips are a little bit flexed, and the momentum of her vertical velocity causes her to propel forward just a little bit on that jump. As aforementioned, in the stance phase, it would be helpful if her feet were staggered to decrease the motion and increase the balance during that velocity going upward. She could also alter the height of the vertical jump by increasing the force produced through the muscles, and that would be by flexing the hips and the knees. The wrist and the finger flex downward as the ball is propelled forward. The ball has a horizontal velocity, not only due to the vertical velocity of the jump, but also due to the torque in the elbow and the shoulder, causing that forearm to propel forward. The Magnus effect is due to the release at the fingertips, causing the ball to rotate backward. And the ball is released at the height of the jump. However, it could have had a higher projectile had she jumped more vertically instead of forward. That being said, a correction that Jaylyn could make would be to increase flexion of the shoulder so that she gets more of a vertical on that release, causing an increased projectile or more of an arc, so she has a better chance of the ball going in. Also, she could work on how high she jumps so that she could increase that arc as well. Some factors to think about when performing a jump shot in order to maximize performance would be the vertical and horizontal velocity of the ball, such as the vertical jump, release. The ball displacement as well is a factor, the velocity of the player, how quickly they get off the ground, the forces of the body, such as at the joints, where the knees, the elbows, the wrist, and the time at which forces are produced in those areas. In addition, the angles of release, such as where the ball is being released from. We spoke about how Jaylyn released a little bit more horizontal than vertical as far as her forearm was concerned, so that could affect the trajectory or the projectile. The height of the vertical jump can be controlled depending on how far or how high the player can jump. Uncontrollable factors are drag force and then acceleration due to gravity. Force is produced upward and creates a vertical velocity. This is generated through the knees, the hips, the shoulder, the elbow, and the wrist. Basketball players differ in height and have various length proportions among body segments, which could alter the amount of force they are able to produce. Also, multiple muscles ranging from the small to the large cause force summation, which can also impact the amount of force produced as well. The pre-takeoff and the jump initiate the relationship due to the time it takes to generate those forces. We saw that Jaylyn did not have her feet staggered, and so when she jumped, her momentum went up, but it also went forward. However, if those feet were staggered a little bit and her body was more aligned and turned, it would have caused more of a balance and she would have prevented going forward. Vertical velocity is produced during the pre-takeoff and jump phases, in which the player's velocity from the forces produced are propelled upward and exerted onto the ball. We saw how Jaylyn's momentum did carry her forward. We also saw that her forearm was a little bit more horizontal than it was vertical, and it didn't increase that projectile as needed. So we do know the impulse-momentum relationship does impact the velocity, not only of the player, but of the ball. Some factors that impact ball displacement are the vertical jump, the forces generated throughout the body, where the ball is released, such as vertically, or again, where that forearm is, the ball vertical and horizontal velocity. So where the ball goes is going to be dependent on velocity or how quickly it's released, the acceleration or change of that velocity, and air resistance or the drag.